so exciting. I'm really happy to have so many people to share the next hour with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And we can't forget Canada and Mexico. We've got people from 3 different countries here.
Wow, excellent. So, so we have Canada, Mexico, and America. I think that there's a lot of people also from Australia, but because it's 3 in the morning there at the moment, people have registered, but they're going to view it later.
Well, hello into the future.
I have quite a few colleagues from my days at. I know. Hi, everybody from Australia.
Mm-hmm. I'm just checking to see who else is logged in. We've got Oklahoma, Florida, Duluth, Minnesota. Very nice. Princeton, New Jersey. Santa Cruz. All right, so we'll hand over to Gretchen. And Gretchen, you are muted.
Sorry about that. Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Columbia School of Social Work webinar, Web-Based Self-Help Therapy and the Clinical Social Worker. My name is Gretchen Knudsen, and I'll be your moderator today. To achieve the optimal experience using Adobe Connect, here are a few tips and tricks. Most browsers with Adobe Connect. However, past users have experienced audio issues. So for a smoother experience, if you're using Google Chrome, please log out, close the Chrome browser, and launch a new browser like Firefox or Internet Explorer and rejoin the webinar. So no matter which browser you're using, please sign in with your full name so we can see you in the room and we know who you are. Here is the chat pod where you can interact with our speakers and each other. So this chat pod is your personal tool, so feel free to modify the text size, and this is a great spot where you can provide your thoughts, questions, or comments. There will also be a Q&A where we'll be taking live questions from the audience. And stick around. At the end of the webinar, one lucky participant will win 8 steps to becoming you. The best webinars have active audience participation, and it's easy to contribute to the conversation, so we want to hear from you. In case you'd rather not use the chat pod, well, polls are a good place to start, and we probably have a lot of experienced users with polls because that's probably what you've already done as you were logging in. However, if you are experiencing some technical issues, please feel free to let us know. We have folks behind the scenes who can help you out. And now let's hear from Mary-Lea Awanohara. She's our Director of Communications. She's also the creator who envisioned and created this webinar series on social work careers. She's going to introduce you to Laurie Marsden, our featured guest, and Laurie is going to tell us about how she has broken new ground using online as a way to deliver mental health services. Mary-Lea, off to you.
Thank you, Gretchen, and thank you for being today's moderator. Gretchen works in our Alumni and Development Office. Hi, everyone, and welcome to our very first program in our new series on social work careers. What's a social worker doing? Fill in the blank. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Laurie Marsden, who is our special guest. Welcome, Laurie. Oh, Laurie, we can't hear you. Are you?
How's that?
That's great. Okay, we've got Laurie.
Okay, thank
Thank
you for having me, Mary-Lea.
Great to see you and hear you. Okay, we started up this career series because there are so many things that you can do with an MSW. I don't have an MSW, and there are many days at my job here as the communications director that I wish I did. I feel a little envious of all the people who do because they can do so many things with that degree. And Laurie here is a prime example. She had a career in the fashion industry, and then she came to Columbia to earn an undergraduate degree, and then she took a graduate social work degree at our school in clinical social work. And since then, she's had her own private practice, and she's developed a therapy program for women called 8 Steps to Becoming You. And then a couple of years ago, she packaged that program to put it on the web, and she was doing all this while being a mother who stays at home with kids and takes care of her children. So there's this flexibility with the MSW that's really, really great. But I think the best way to introduce Laurie is to show the little video we made on the day she walked into our office to tell us about her 8 Steps program. Would that be okay, Laurie, that we screen this video?
Absolutely. That sounds great, Mary-Lea. Thank you.
I was always interested in working with women, even before I went to social work school, because I had a different career where I was in the fashion industry, and I realized that it wasn't really doing a lot for women. So I went back to school at Columbia, and I got into mental health, and it was kind of a natural progression, because that was where I learned so much about what women are really struggling with. I kind of knew from just being in the other profession, but there's nothing like working in mental health and really seeing women when they have such struggles and they have such problems that they need to solve. And it was a real honor for me to be able to help them at those moments. My program, the 8 Steps to Becoming You, started really with group work in a very old-fashioned social work way. So, in groups, with women sharing, and slowly I started seeing these same kind of issues were coming up with women. You find out that a woman's lost sense of who she is. She doesn't know what she feels anymore. She's kind of out of touch with her feelings. She can't communicate her needs. She can't draw boundaries in relationships. She's not taking care of her health as much. And so those are the things you end up working on in therapy. So I created a program that addresses those issues, and so women in a variety of situations can do the program and benefit from it. I spent a lot of time in the mental health field in the traditional sense, helping people one at a time. But I realized at one point, I said, I can't expect women to come to me. I'm going to go to them. And so that's what I decided to do.
Hi, I'm Laurie Marsden. Welcome. I've created this website for women like you, smart, interesting, vibrant women who juggle lots of duties and roles but don't have a lot of time for themselves.
Web-based therapy is taking off. There's been several research studies that show that it is very effective. Some web-based therapy, you just kind of text people, it's done on computer and you write back and forth. Where I have 46 videos and a 95-page workbook. And in the videos, I talk to the women about the different issues and the concepts. And then they can fill out the workbook and they can kind of do that reflection that you would do in a therapy session with someone that you're face-to-face with. And there's also a community board in the program where women can share their stories, and I monitor that as well. It makes it accessible to people. If someone can't access treatment because they can't afford it, or they don't have the time because they're working, they can't fit it into their schedule, they can't travel to get there, how do you do that? So this is why I'm so excited, because it is a new type of intervention that's going to reach people where they are and just bring therapy out to so many people who otherwise couldn't.
That's such a good video, Laurie.
Yeah, it really is. Thank you for doing that. That was great. It was lots of fun to do, too.
Yeah, and now that I see it again, I have to make a confession. Before I came to work at the School of Social Work, I didn't actually know that social workers and many social workers make a living as therapists. So I wondered, did you go to social work school thinking you would become a therapist? And do social workers make good therapists?
You know, it wasn't my plan to be a therapist. It was really my plan to help women, like I explained in the video and you touched on as well. When I got out of the modeling industry, I really had several months where I could do a lot of soul searching, and I thought, well, what can I do? And I really sort of wanted to make a difference, and I wanted to do something good and positive for women. So that was my goal. Sort of being a therapist was a bonus. When I was back at school at Columbia doing my undergrad, I had some great advisors, and I worked with different people who we explored the different options I could do, and social work was a really great one for me when I looked into it. For those of you in the audience who are not social workers study a biopsychosocial perspective. So we not only look at someone's psychology, but we also look at someone's biology, you know, their medical history. We look at their social place, their status in society, if they're disadvantaged or not, what social supports they have, what systems they're in. So it kind of gives a very holistic approach. And it's a really great place to come and meet people for therapy with that perspective. So it was a really good choice for me. Now, do social workers make great therapists? I think they make great therapists. And but I think no matter what profession you're in, the important thing is to have done some of your own therapy. It's like being on the other side of the couch is really important, so that you know the process, and it's helpful not only personally but also professionally.
Okay, and also I know that your first career was as a model, and the fashion industry, even though it's very female-dominated, is notorious for not treating women terribly well. And I see that you came out of it determined to help women. What are some of the things you personally observed in the industry when you were a model?
Yeah, you know, the fashion industry is kind of an interesting place. In some ways it glorifies women, and in other ways it really, you know, creates these images that make a lot of us feel bad, like who looks like that kind of thing, you know. So, and it's not really great to the people who are in the industry either. There's some glamorous aspects, which I think the media likes to put out there, but there's a lot of criticism in the industry, and it's a very brutal place. And most girls who are starting are teenagers. I mean, I started as a teenager, and you know, for instance, when I met Eileen Ford for the first time, she looked at my portfolio and she kind of handed it back and said, "Your eyes photographed too close together for my taste." So I think I was 16 at the time. So 5 years later, she ended up representing me for 7 years. But it's just kind of this fickle industry. It kind of wears women, it can wear you down. It's very stressful. You have to have a certain body type. You know, I saw women struggling with these things, struggling with the stress of it. And sometimes women got depressed or had, you know, body image problems, or you know, even there were some women, I think Angelina Jolie did a movie about this model, Gia, who she had an addiction issue, and she ended up contracting AIDS and dying. So, you know, I mean, that's an extreme example, but it's not always a great industry for women, either in it or people who view the images.
Right. Laurie, so you are the first guest in our What's the Social Worker Doing series, so I think I have to ask you, what's a social worker doing offering a web-based therapy program for women? Because when I think of social workers, I think of them face-to-face with their clients, and I know you're good at the face-to-face therapy because I've read all of the testimonials on your site. And so how did you get into the web-based therapy business?
Well, Mary-Lea, I was essentially listening to the women. So, you know, that's how the 8 steps came into being, was listening to the women and what their mutual struggles were. But I also started hearing a lot about, I just don't have the time. You know, women, we're multitaskers. We're too busy for our own good. We're doing this, we're doing that. We have so many roles that we have in our lives and in society. So women would really want to do the program. They'd need to do the program, but there was always something else that was keeping them from doing it, you know, what we call barriers to treatment. So I wanted to take away those barriers, and I wanted to bring something to women that they could do in the comfort of their home, at their schedule when they wanted. And I'm finding that not only are women finding the program online, but I'm also working with clinicians and institutions so that they can do my program while they're doing other treatment as well. So it's ended up, having that extra layer to it, and it's all been very, very exciting.
That's great. Okay, well, I think I'm going to take off now, but good luck to you, and I know Matthea's got lots of good questions for you.
Great. Okay.
Sorry about that. Thank you so much, ladies. And Laurie, it's great to see you again. So let's go a little bit deeper. Today's discussant is Matthea Marquart, who you've seen a little bit earlier. She's the Associate Director of the School of Social Work's online campus. Matthea is an instructor for the Social Work Administration track, and she's also a Columbia School of Social Work alum. She will talk about online mental health services and how enterprising social workers can launch businesses of their own. Then Laurie is going to come back so they can take questions from you and offer their perspectives on web-based self-help therapy. Matthea, off to you.
Thanks very much, Gretchen. I appreciate the nice warm welcome. And thank you to everybody who is here. I really am so excited to see so many people here from all around the country and from other countries as well. So one reason that I'm absolutely delighted to be a part of the online campus here at the School of Social Work is because technology is so important for social workers. And I'd love to hear some of your examples in chat about how you're using technology when it comes to mental health support or mental health services. Some examples are here on this slide. For example, social workers are using texting, they're using telephone therapy instead of face-to-face therapy, also webinar or web-based therapy, webcam-based therapy. And then I don't know if the last time you went to the doctor, you got your health results, your test results online, but that's now a new part of Obamacare, actually. So that's going to be spreading, and that's really important for social workers. And there are all sorts of behavior change apps for smartphones. For example, here in the School of Social Work, one of our professors is developing an app for complicated grief. So Kathy Shear is developing that app, and that should be available in a couple years. And there's all sorts of other innovative mental health-based apps that are being developed for smartphones. So I see people are typing, and I hope that you're sharing some examples as well. Oh, very interesting. Carol does a single women's group on Zoom, which is similar to Skype, but has a HIPAA-compliant option. Thank you. That's really good. Yep, and Barbara's pointing out that remote areas make technology really important because if people are in sort of remote or more isolated areas, they have access to fewer services if they have to go in person, as opposed to being online, where then it expands the availability. Yep, Leia's using email as part of DBT. Great, Holly offers telephonic consultation for EAP, wonderful. Employee assistance programs. Great, yeah. I echo Stephanie. These are wonderful questions and comments. All right, so I'm going to tie this into online education now. So one of the reasons that we offer online courses is because it's really important to prepare students for this kind of technology. Technology is so important for social workers, and one way to become good at technology is to take online courses. And this option is available for our residential students as well as our online students. Our residential students can take up to 2 online courses per semester, and our online students, if they're in the New York area, can take up to 2 residential courses per semester. And in this way, we're expanding technology education for all of our students. This also lets us have students in locations all around the country, as well as instructors all around the country, so we're able to recruit amazing instructors who live all sorts of places, not just New York. I don't think we have time for the video. I'm going to type into chat if you'd like to watch a video about our online campus, there is the URL. And I'd like to share with you a little bit of a survey that we did of our online students. So one of our courses we've been running for a couple years now, and one of the questions we asked our students was, what professional skills do you want to develop as part of taking online classes? And this is beyond learning the subject matter. So this was a statistics course where we surveyed the students. So beyond learning statistics, what did the students want to learn in terms of skills? And you can see that students wanted to build their confidence with online technologies. They wanted to develop self-motivation, which is something that is really important for our online students. They wanted experience with virtual presentations and collaboration with virtual teams. There's a lot that goes into an online course beyond just the content learning. I know we have online students here with us today, and I'm really happy that they can join us and be part of our community, even though they don't live in New York. So this is something that is growing around the country, and especially in the field of social work. There aren't that many online MSW programs, so we're in the vanguard, and we like to say that we're at the cutting edge. And I'd just like to share this quote from an alumni with you because it really highlights the benefits of learning about technology. And this is an alumni who graduated. She had taken a couple online courses as part of her residential MSW degree and found herself supervising a team, a virtual team. So they were located all around the world. And she's never going to meet some of them in person, but she's able to manage them because of the skills that she developed online. So with that, I'd like to invite Laurie back up, and I've got another poll for you. So we're going to start to address some of the questions that have been coming up in chat, and we're going to start off with the question of how does one do this? So starting your own business or nonprofit. I see that there are folks here who already have started their own business or nonprofit. Some people are planning to. Some folks are on the fence. They're not sure. There's a few, definitely not for me, but they're here because they're curious. So no one needs luck yet. No one's in the process. Oh, 3 people are in the process, so we wish you luck.
Very good.
Mm-hmm. All right, so I'm just going to do a quick countdown, and then I'm going to move on. Wow, 20 already have. That's wonderful. And 15 plan to in the future. All right, so then that leads to our first question, Laurie. And the question is about your story in starting an online business. So please tell us your story. How did you get started? How long did it take?
Okay. Well, it's not my first business. I think that's important to make a note of. I have had a private practice my entire career as a licensed clinical social worker, and for the participants out there who have a private practice, they understand the business aspect of that. So, you have your building your referral bases and your networking, and you have your admin and your billing. So there's all those kind of skills that you develop as you have run that business. I also lived in Australia for 10 years, and I think I saw someone from Australia actually on there, so on the chat. And while I was there, I opened a business called Becoming You Australia. And I did that because as I was running the program, I wanted to take it sort of outside of the places that I usually ran it. So I, put it on in institutions and government agencies. And when I brought it into doing workshops in wellness centers and in community centers, and it was sort of on my watch, I wanted to have a business, so I had the structure, and also to have some protection for my intellectual property. So I don't know if we have time to tell a little story about that or not, but there was
a story. Yes.
There's a story. Now, it was very important because we all try to be good and not take things from other people or give credit where it is required. But I did have an instance in Australia where someone else started to run a program called Become You, and my program was called Becoming You at the time. It was in 8 steps. So because I had a business, I had that ability to call those clinicians up and have a discussion with them. And because I had a business, they understood that they just couldn't, they couldn't use the same name, and any similarities, they needed to look at as well. So something like that is very important when you're having a business. Now, that being said, setting up LaurieMarsden.com was a much bigger endeavor. It took almost a year and a half to take the program and make it into a product, and also to conceptualize and implement the building of the website. Now, I did a lot of the work on my own as much as I could, and I have a creative side, so some of the product development I really enjoyed doing. But there was, like the website, for instance, I hired a company. I hired people as needed. The website and the building of that website was very big. If you go to LaurieMarsden.com, you'll look. There's lots of tabs. There's lots of there's just a lot of information, and the program itself lives on the website in a separate part of LaurieMarsden.com. So it was really a very big undertaking. I'm not sure I knew what I was getting into when I started, but it was a lot of hard work. But I was really driven by this dream that I had. I wanted to make this accessible for women, and I wanted them to have that option to be able to be in their home and do the program and not have to worry about transportation issues and appointment times and all of those barriers that they had told me about. I wanted just to get rid of that. So that kind of helped me make it through all of the learning curve that I had in doing the business.
Mm-hmm. So Paulette has a question for you about how do you do this logistically? How do you bring in an income with this kind of product?
Well, I charge for the program. So, it's not free. There's a lot of things on the website that are free. For instance, there's a lot of information. You can subscribe to my newsletter, and I put blogs out, and those are informative. So there's free aspects to it. There's an ebook as well on the website, and that's free. But the program itself, I charge money for, and so that's how I generate income.
Mm-hmm. And Holly is asking, how do you manage licensure rules across state lines? I think this might not apply for your product.
It does not.
Mm-hmm. Great. All right, so let's move on to our next poll. So you were sort of alluding to this earlier when you were talking about intellectual property and
right.
Some things being free and some things not being free. So I'm wondering what folks think about what the unique challenges of starting an online business might be. Yep. So the risk of being pirated or hacked is actually coming up at the top. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, and it's a worry. You spend a lot of time, a lot of resources. People spend a lot of money getting an education, and they come up with their own concepts and their own ideas. And you don't want anybody just walking away with it. There's that guy on CNN who's often been slapped, gotten little slaps for taking people's things. I think you remember his name, Matthea. But yeah, everybody needs to give credit where credit's due, and I think that's important. So I understand that concern, and that is interesting. It is up to 67. It's the highest of the challenges that people are commenting on.
Yep. And another one is that there's skepticism about the quality of online products. How do you convince people that your product is a quality product?
Well, I think it's less about that it's a quality product and more about that it's there and it's available. I find that people are unaware of what is available online in this respect, what kind of clinical interventions are online. So I spend a lot of time educating people about what it is and what my product is, and then I often bring up other online products and other types of interventions, and really just educating people. It's so new, Matthea. It's so cutting edge, and nobody. It's just not in our awareness at the moment. Yes, we use the web for so many things, but I think there's something about using it for therapy and for that type of. It's almost like with your school with doing online courses. People think about they think about going to school, university, they think about sitting in the chair and listening to the professor. So there's all these preconceived ideas of what it is. So for me, it's just been a matter of educating people, and it hasn't been an issue with quality at all.
Thank you. So we're moving on to our next set of questions for you, which I think is going to apply to some of what folks have been asking in chat as well. Whoops, let me just move that along. So what are some of the challenges that you face? Because you could have done like a DVD and a book, but instead you chose to develop an online product. And were these different from when you were setting up your face-to-face therapy practice?
Right. Yes. Well, I actually looked at doing a DVD and a book. I considered that, but when I talked to some IT specialists in the area, they pointed out that a lot of computers no longer have the ports for the DVDs, and their feeling was that they were slowly going to be just come out of you wouldn't be able to get a computer with one at some point in the near future. Everything's in the cloud these days. So when I thought about it, I thought, well, I don't want to create a product that then becomes obsolete because nobody can use it. And I think it's a little cumbersome anyway. You have the disk, and so I just thought, well, let's not even have that in the equation. It's just simpler. Everybody's on tablets these days and all these other devices. So another reason I didn't want to go down that route was because the cost of the product would have gone up significantly, and I wanted it to be affordable. The price of the 8 steps to becoming you, it's about the same as 3 co-pays if you went for 8 or 10 therapy sessions, which is about the equivalent of what the product material covers. So it's very, very affordable, and that was important for me because I didn't want it to be just for a certain socioeconomic level. I wanted anyone who was motivated and wanted to get help to be able to get it. So I think the other part of your question, were you asking about the challenges that I had with setting it up? It was a lot less. Setting up a private practice is a lot less complicated than creating and launching an online product. I mean, I had the benefit that I already had a program, and that was a big advantage. So if you didn't have that and you were starting something from scratch, I think it would be a lot harder. But I think I had an issue too that there was nothing out there for me to look at and to see and to kind of use. So I have the first web-based therapy ever launched for women. And particularly with the way that I did it, with everything very engaging and the videos and the workbook. And so it was hard. There was no template. There was no like, oh, I want to do that. I like what that person did. And I'll do something, with my content, but I like the structure of that business. There was nothing. So I had to actually, create that and think about how it would all translate and then implement, my ideas as they came. So there were a lot of challenges, but again, I think it was really worth it. I'm very, very pleased.
So just to give folks an idea of what we're talking about, I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger. So this is what the website looks like, and then we're going to take a look at just a snippet from one of the videos as well.
There is a plague affecting many women today. They look in the mirror and see only their faults. Worse yet, they see flaws that aren't even there. They imagine themselves bigger than they are, less attractive than they are. The image they have of their bodies is not grounded or balanced. It's not healthy, and sometimes it's not at all correct. People who accept the way they look and feel good about themselves most of the time have a positive body image. They understand that the way that they look does not determine their worth.
So that is a snippet of one of the videos. And with that, I'm going to bring us over to the third poll. So we're going to shift gears a little bit, and then after this we've got Q&A, which I understand folks are getting excited about. So, we'd like to think about, we've been talking about starting a business, and you're a social worker with a clinical background. So, what kind of skills that are related to social work might be useful when starting a business? So I see people here are responding, and we've got a lot of social workers in the room as well.
Mm-hmm.
So ability to conduct a needs assessment, people skills, self-awareness, right. Ability to conduct and understand research. Mm-hmm. Great ability to understand perspectives of others.
Mm-hmm. Very good.
Great. So then this is going to transition to my final question for you before we get into our Q&A portion. Mm-hmm. All right, it's just taking a second to load. All right, so this actually was a question that came up in the chat as well. But what are some of the highlights that you experienced? And what did you learn, and what advice do you have for folks that are here?
I think some of the highlights was the product development. I mentioned I have a creative side, and so I wanted the workbook to be, very beautifully laid out like a magazine. So I would go out and I would take photographs, and I'd come back and I'd be doing the layouts, and I really enjoyed that work. Some of the things I learned as I went. I never really thought that I would be doing code in my life. Like when I went to CSSW, I never thought I'd be doing computer code, but I have to say that in the last, year, I have learned how to write some of it. I learned so many things that I don't think I really have, time to talk about everything that I learned launching this business. But, I think that, as far as advice goes, and probably people are really curious about that, I would say that if you're going to launch something online, or if you're going to do any business, really, you have to be very clear about what it is that you want to do. So try to be as clear and concise and narrow it down as much as possible. Also, do some research and think about who will use your intervention, why they will use it, and how they will use it. One of the things that people don't like to do, but it's so key to any successful business, is doing a business plan. So, like I said, no one really likes to do them, but they're incredibly necessary. And while you're doing the business plan, you're going to flesh out a lot of things about, your vision. Because anyone who wants to do a business, they have a vision, they have a goal. They say, I want to do this, I want to bring this, I want to help this type of person, this population. So whatever that is, that's fine. But the process of writing it down and that clarification that happens when you're doing a business plan and bouncing the ideas off of people. Also, the internet, and now, when I started my research on what I wanted to do, there was not very much out there. Now there's more and more happening online. You see programs, there's a lot actually for addiction online. I've come across several since I launched. So, you just do your research, see what's out there, see what's available, see if you have something different to offer, and really flush it out as much as you can before you do anything. So that would be my biggest advice to everybody that's here, because I think that is, we're, as social workers, we want to get in there and help, or we want to get in there and do, what we envision, but that business side needs to be there, and you need to step back and you need to say, well, how is this actually going to work, and how, and can I make a viable business out of it?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Well, I think maybe it's time to get started with the Q&A, and I'm just scrolling through the chat. So Caitlin wonders, have you found any issues with setting boundaries that might be different from being face-to-face?
No, I haven't. I haven't at all. In fact, there's such an anonymous nature to doing an online program. So I saw in chat too, and I'm sorry we can't answer. There's so many questions, and they're all going down, down, down. So I don't think we're trying to ignore any questions. Just we're trying to get through everything, and we'd certainly love to answer everything that we can. But the online interventions are shown to be very effective, and the research supports that. And one of the reasons that they think they are so effective is that people like the anonymity, and they self-disclose to themselves. And because they can do that, they're very honest, and they make gains that they might not in therapy. And it's interesting because when you're with someone face-to-face in therapy, even though you've set up a confidential environment, and your whole goal is to make someone feel safe in disclosing, they still might not want to do that. And people out there who are working as clinicians know this, that you might see someone for quite a while, and suddenly they'll disclose something months or even years into treatment that they hadn't before. So it's interesting that this online intervention method really helps people to make more progress earlier because they can disclose to themselves in this anonymous way.
So it seems like from a few of the questions that there's some confusion about whether your program is like a therapy program or a self-help program. Could you clarify, please?
Sure. Sure. Well, I'm comfortable with either label. For me, therapy, what happens in therapy? Whenever someone comes into therapy, you really ask them questions in order to spur their own self-awareness. Like a good therapist will never tell anybody what to do. That's not the point of therapy. A good therapist will ask someone questions so that they themselves do the personal reflection that's necessary, so that they will make the changes in their lives, so that they will have those aha moments or those epiphanies, and then they can make the changes to their behavior that will help with their mood, that will help, to get them on a healthy mental grounding. And that's the whole point of therapy. So when someone works through the 8 Steps program, for instance, it's the same process. So on the videos, I ask them questions. I ask them, to think about certain things. I have the workbook, which supports the videos, and the videos support the workbook around the different topics. And then the women write their responses or their thoughts based on, the personal reflection they do. So I see it as being, very, very similar to the therapy process. Now, it's also self-help as well, because nobody's there to prompt you. So the most important thing for a client who's doing this program is they have to be motivated. I have clients that do the program, and some take the one step a week is kind of recommended, and some do like 3 steps a week or do the whole thing and come in the next week and they're all excited. So you have that option too with the 8 Steps program.
One person asked about the price. Do you feel comfortable letting us know the cost of your program?
Sure. It's $199 for the program.
And we've got a question from Pia who asks, she's pointing out NASW has added a virtual conference this year for those who can't make it to DC next week. And she wonders, do you think there's a connection? Do you think this means there's a shift in thinking regarding the legitimacy and effectiveness of virtual therapy?
I think so. I was at the national conference in Washington 2 years ago, and there was a lot of chatter about interventions, online interventions, and there were presentations on online interventions, and there was this debate that was going on whether we should do these things or whether we shouldn't, if they're ethical or they're not, and meanwhile, that at the end of these presentations, there was these lists of these different interventions that were already happening, and then the effectiveness of them. There has been a lot of research on the types of interventions that are currently out there, and it does show that they're very effective. I mean, it surprises me a little bit as well that people are gravitating to it. But, it does just solve so many issues for people, issues of accessibility, issues of affordability, and the anonymous nature of the programs and the different things offered online. People really like, and I think this is the way that the world is moving, and I think there will still be people walking indoors and sitting in chairs and talking face to face as well.
We've got a question about whether your program is billable. Do you ever have clients
it's not
paying for your program through insurance?
No, not yet. It's something that I'm looking at. I'm looking at approaching insurance companies, but that has not happened at this point. So anyone who does it, it's out of pocket.
Paulette is wondering, what about liability issues? Have you had to consider anything like that?
Yes, before I launched, of course, I thought about those issues. So I have a disclaimer: nobody can buy the program unless they check that they understand that it's not a replacement for traditional therapy, and that they that there's it also says that you shouldn't be doing this product, obviously, if you're in crisis. It's not a crisis program. It's not anything for crisis management. It's not for someone who's suicidal or who has any thoughts of self-harm or harming to others. So it's a legal sort of document, if you will, that I had drawn up with my legal team when I launched. So people have to check that in order to buy the program. So I've done what I can to sort of cover that. And Black Dog Institute, which is a very big company in Australia, I think it's government funded. They do a lot of online therapy, not quite what I'm doing, but they still offer a lot. And they have the same sort of disclaimer that you must check in order to do their program. So it's pretty common.
So shifting gears a little bit, marketing has been a big topic in the chat thread here. Do you have any tips for folks with businesses about marketing?
Marketing is always something that anyone who does a business, they go, wow, how do I do this? How do I market this? And it's a very important part of what you're doing. How do you get people to know about what you're doing and let them know why they should also be doing whatever it is or taking part in your business? With an online business, there's some things you can do as far as being discovered. So there's something called search engine optimization, and if you have either on your website or in perhaps blogs that you write, if you have certain keywords that come up more frequently, those will be tagged. So Google looks constantly and essentially scans all the different sites to see what words come up. And then if you have a certain amount of words more than someone else, you'll be higher up on the listing. If someone Googles, web-based therapy or whatever, or depression or whatever your business is, then you want to be obviously towards the top of that of the list, because very few people, when they do search, go to page 56. They go to page 1 or they go to page 2. So if you're doing something online, that's obviously something to look into, but you need to do a bit of research but that's a good place to start. And writing blogs is very helpful.
Francesca asks, do you believe that online-based therapy will make mental health resources more accessible for those who live with chronic illness and pain that may make going to an office or clinic particularly difficult?
Exactly right. And that's the beauty of the online interventions that are coming up and that are out there. Perfect. That's exactly right. If someone is having issues, there's a barrier to treatment. They can't get out. They're homebound. They're in chronic pain. It's a perfect example of why we actually need these as part of our toolbox. Because I think sometimes people get concerned that it's going to take over, and all the clinicians out there will somehow be out of business. That's not what's going to happen. But clinicians and institutions, they can use these online interventions as extra tools in their toolbox, so that if they have a client that needs to be more focused, I mean, how many times do you have a client, if you're clinicians out there and they're just all over the place, you're trying to put out fires. If you can refer them to something like the 8 Steps program, they can do that, and that will focus them, and they can bring in the worksheets, and they can work with you on the work that they've done on their own. So it's just more tools for us, and that's really how we need to look at it.
So we've got a couple questions about the model and can it be adapted for different groups. So Annie is wondering, can this be adapted for adolescents? And someone else earlier was asking, can it be used for men?
Right. It could be. So, I mean, as far as the model goes, you mean like the way that I've structured the 8 Steps program?
I think that's what they meant.
Yeah. Right. Locally, I'm looking at doing something for adolescents. I mean, because one of the 8 Steps is sexuality, deals with sexuality and body image, I look at it as more of an adult program, but of course there's a lot of adolescents who are becoming active. So I'm looking at just tweaking the product a little bit to make it available to that sort of upper adolescent age group. And it's interesting too, I get this a lot, that men say, well, is there an 8 Steps for men? And I really wanted to focus on women because that's the population that I wanted to reach. And we all do this in our jobs, and social workers particularly. We sort of, we specialize, or we pick a population that we feel a calling to work with. So that's what I've done, and that's why I've done this for women, not necessarily to exclude men. And women do have, although there's a lot of overlap, women do have, I think, other specific things that they struggle with, like body image, for instance, which doesn't seem to affect men that much, although there's some research saying men are becoming more affected by that as well. But it certainly could be adapted to other populations, yes.
Vanessa says that she is very fascinated with Marsha Linehan's work, and she's wondering what material you might be using that you drew from research or evidence-based practice in developing your 8 Steps.
Right. I'm not familiar with Marsha's work, so but the second part of that question was about
what kind of research?
Again, Matthea?
She's wondering about what kind of research you used when developing the model.
Okay. Well, a lot of qualitative research, so basically a lot of interviewing of women as they came in individually or in groups. So the program really developed in a very social work grassroots way, in groups with women and discussing all the various underlying issues. So in other words, people would come in with the presenting problem, and whether they were diagnosed with depression, or they were struggling in relationships, or they had anxiety disorder, or whatever it might be, when you started working with women, you saw that there were these underlying problems. And so there was a lot of, like I said, qualitative research that I did with the women to kind of flush out their narrative and flush out their story. And then I developed a program around those issues. So I also, I did, a bit of quantitative research when I ran the program with Vietnam Veterans Counseling Service in Australia, where I ran it for women who were family members of veterans and also current serving members of the Australian Defence Force. And I measured well-being, depression, and self-esteem. So I ran some scales there. And there was a big, significant increased on all three of those measures. So that was very encouraging. So, as the program has developed, I've done research and really it's coming from the place of working very, very much clinically in clinical settings with women around these various issues.
Mm-hmm. Amaris is asking about, I wonder if this is a question about cannibalizing your services, actually, because she says, can you tell us about who you worked with in your private practice, and did any of them then buy your product and sort of go off on their own? So they might have been a client and then left to do self-help instead.
Left to do, like, to take my product off on their own? Is that the question? Yep. No, I haven't had that happen. No, I haven't had that happen. Mm-mm.
Okay.
Which is good.
Steve is asking. Steve's asking. You mentioned education. Yep. You mentioned education as your main way of growing awareness of your program. Can you elaborate on what you did for education outside of the free information that's on your website?
Sure. So I do presentations at different institutions. So I've presented to Southampton Hospital, to a domestic violence shelter out here called The Retreat. I presented to East End Clinical Connection, which is a group of for clinicians. I'm currently talking to the Renfrew Center in New York, so eating disorders, and there's several others. So I go and I sort of educate big groups of people and institutions, because it can be, again, the 8 steps can be used if you have a client and you're giving services to that client. You could also look at referring them to this program while you're currently doing the services. So that's just another way that I've worked to increase my referral sources.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I can tell we're getting down to, maybe we have time for 2 more questions. Eileen asks, how do the women connect with you beyond watching the videos?
Right. So there's a couple ways. People can email me at Laurie at lauriemarsden.com, but that gets a bit busy. I also have a community board. So the community board is broken into each step. So while someone's doing each step, they can comment at the specific board for that step, so that all of the comments would be similar in vein. So you're not, commenting on step 8 when someone else is commenting on step 1. So it kind of keeps the theme in the comments. Interestingly, I've said this before, it's not as utilized as I thought it would be. And I think that's because of the anonymity, that people enjoy doing an online program. So, so the option is there, but it's not being utilized as much as I would have thought.
And then this is a combo question. So one question is, do you do just regular face-to-face therapy? And the other part of it is, do you do retreats or seminars?
Right. So I do face-to-face. I've gone back to having a small private practice, but I do keep it small. I see here in Sag Harbor. I haven't gone and done a webinar, a seminar. I used to do that, so that's kind of where I decided that I needed to bring it to women. So it sort of went from group work to, workshops to seminars, and then it's gone online. So I'm sort of focusing on the online, but, I do look at, potential speaking opportunities as they arise.
Mm-hmm. Great. And just one quick follow-up question. You had mentioned the anonymity component, and Elizabeth is wondering, on your chat board, can women post anonymously?
Yes, they can. So it really depends on how they initially register. So a lot of people choose a different name to register, and so just your name will, your kind of username will show up. So not everybody uses their real name. It's like in any, anything online where you have to put in a username. So that's one way to maintain their anonymity.
Great, thank you. So I know that we are down to our last 2 minutes, and we had promised to do a giveaway. So just going to pull out our randomizer to do our giveaway, and this is going to randomly select somebody in the room. Big suspense here, big suspense.
There we go, drum roll.
Great. So Alexandra, if you want to get in touch, we will connect you with this giveaway. And thank you, Laurie, for donating this. We appreciate that.
No problem. It's my pleasure. And thank you, Matthea, and thanks everybody for coming. And it's been a great webinar. Thanks very much.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and Mary-Lea wants me to remind everybody that we had said we'd do a giveaway for the best comment, but because there were so many good comments, there was no way we could just select the best comment. So that's why we went to the randomizer.
Terrific. Thank you so much, ladies. I hope that everybody had grabbed some very valuable takeaways from today. So please keep a lookout for the next event. Oh, before you do that, there is a poll, so please fill that out so we have your feedback so we can really make these online programs the most informative for you. So if you want to take your skills to another level, check out our online campus. You can find that on socialwork.columbia.edu/the-student-experience/online-campus. So thanks again for joining us online, and have a great day.
Thank you, Gretchen.
Thank you.